building the world's, here in Alberta, the world's first 2 hydrogen fuel cell Class 8 trucks. Here. Suncor, I got the moniker Future Girl, and they made a T-shirt for me that had the Superman kind of logo on, but had an F. I couldn't wear it anywhere. Anyway, so I'm here to speak with you today about Alberta's energy system, about oil and particularly oil, not so much gas, and about hydrogen economy that's coming, I hope. And we're going to go through why it's critically important for Alberta to embrace hydrogen and to foster a market for hydrogen. We're going to go through that today and the logic and the numbers behind that. So just to give you a little bit more about who's talking to you today, I love nature, I camp, I have a Tesla S, it's just outside. I have solar panels on my house. I love to kayak on rivers and lakes, that's kind of my thing. And I am offering a Tesla ride to everybody tonight after the talk, right? I can take 4 people at a time, and we can get through this whole crowd pretty quick. It's, I highly recommend it. There's a difference between knowing something and knowing that you know, right? When it comes to electric cars, you know, someone tells you, oh gee, there's such a thing as electric cars. And you say, okay, but you could be talked out of that, you know? That's, you know there's electric cars. That's one no, K-N-O-W, no. And then you can maybe see them on the internet. Maybe you see how fast they go. Maybe you see how gorgeous they are. and now you know that you know. But still, you could be talked out of it, how awesome they are. But when you go for a ride in one, then you know that you know that you know. And that only comes from experience, and nobody can talk you out of it. So, this is your chance. Think about it during this talk. I haven't had any wine or anything. So this is your chance to go for a ride in an electric car. Now, when I start off here, I have to thank a bunch of people because I am not the smartest person in the room, you know? I'm just an information aggregator and a systems thinker. And but a lot of this data and a lot of what I'm going to show you today has come from the University of Calgary, from the CESAR group, C-E-S-A-R. Highly recommend them, Dr. David Lazell and Jessica Loff. A lot of this is their very rigorous, really hard work. Also, the Energy Futures Lab, I'm a fellow, really, at the Energy Futures Lab. And I work on the decarbonization team, and I also work on the Energy Futures Roadshow, and we've done that work here in Devon, and we will continue to, I hope. And that's the connection that we made with Walk the Talks. So I would also like to thank Heather Akers and whoever else has something to do with Walk the Talks, because this is an awesome frigging program. And I just applaud you all for coming and for the people who have set this up and set the stage for us tonight. So those are my thanks. So you know a little bit about me. Now I want to know a little bit about you so I know where to aim this a little better. So I'm going to ask some questions, and I want you to raise your hand when you say, oh yeah, I identify with that, it's me. So first one is, how many people have been or are directly or tangentially involved in oil patch work? And how many are not? Okay, very good. And on the political side, we're going to go right, left, center. How many people are more on the right side? And how many people are more on the left side? And how many people are kind of center-ish? Yeah, okay.
And you're clueless.
And how many people want to check D, right? and sort of in terms of how sciencey folks are, like people can be sciencey and other people have other strengths, right? So how many people are a little bit sciencey at least? Yeah, how many people have other strengths? Okay, good. And now for, like a real polarizing question. How many people think that there is at least a possibility that we're experiencing climate change on this globe? And maybe it's going a little faster than it has in the geologic past? How many people? And how many people think not? Okay, very good, thank you. And how many people have kids in their life? Like, it doesn't have to be your kids, just kids in your life or grandkids? And how many people not? Okay, very good. Awesome. So now I know where I'm going with this. So I'm going to skip to the end of the talk and give you my conclusion first, and then we're going to get there and see, if I can make any sense about why this is the conclusion. So speaking plainly, most of Alberta's oil production is going to go away, and in the not too distant future. If freight transportation in North America goes electric instead of hydrogen, fuel cell, then I would say, frankly, Alberta's hooped. Oil price will not be sustained globally through electrification, through the electrification of personal vehicles. It's just a matter of time. It's not a matter of if, in my mind. And if we can leverage our cheap natural gas, which we have a lot of, and a lot of it is just, stranded right now because of the gas price. If we can leverage that natural gas and make hydrogen out of it and sequester the carbon, then we can export that. We can remove the carbon footprint from our customers, and we can make twice the amount of money we've been making on oil. Those are the numbers. So that's what I'm here to talk. Anybody want to leave now? I know, it's controversial. So let's start at the beginning, and I'll show you why I think that way. We're going to be drawing pictures across this thing here. So I'm going to quote myself, and this is to say the pace of world change is accelerating. And it's the dominant factor in business today. No sensible decision can be made any longer without taking into account not just the world as it is, but we have to take into account the world as it's going to be, because it's changing so fast. And how do we prepare for that? How do we plan for that? How does Devon plan for that, right? So the first part of this talk, we're going to be talking about oil, about Alberta's place in that whole system. We're going to be, and then we're going to be talking about hydrogen. So oil is awesome. There's no question. How many human work hours, another poll coming your way here, how many human work hours is there in one barrel of oil? More than 50? Anybody think it's more than 50 hours? Show me. More than 100? More than 500? Keep your hand up if you think it's more than 500 hours of human work in a barrel of oil. More than 1,000? More than 2,000? More than 4,000? Well, I'm the only one with my hand up, and I'm only one who's right. 4,053 human work hours in 1 barrel of oil. No kidding. If we paid, so that's 4,053. 4,053, that's right. So if that's equal, and that's hours, and that equals 2 years of a 40-hour work week. And if we paid somebody $15 an hour for 4 years, for 2 years for a 40-hour work week, how much would we be paying them? $61,000. And we pay what? 50 or 60 bucks for a barrel of oil? Just saying, $61,000 worth of work in that barrel of oil. Just saying. So oil is awesome, and it has absolutely transformed our lives, but we haven't had it for very long in the history of human beings, at least, and we'll get to that. One of the problems is oil price is not in Alberta's control. Oil price is determined globally. It has to do with supply and demand. And our industry, if you think our industry is in trouble now because of pipeline access, you know, we got more serious things coming. So why? Because there is worldwide concern over things like climate change, air pollution, ocean heating and acidification, sea level rise, melting of the polar ice caps and our glaciers that bring us our drinking water, severe weather events. There was a tornado in Alberta just this week. Ottawa's had 2. There's a new tornado alley that goes right through Virginia. Never happened before. So there's costly fallout to all of these things. Food insecurity, look at Venezuela. Water shortages, Cape Town, South Africa. Floods, extinction of species, loss of habitat, long heat waves. Look at what Europe's had going on in June. They've had 100 degrees Fahrenheit for like a month. Massive climate migration of really hungry and desperate people. The US-Mexico border. Brownouts. Forest fires polluting our breathing air. High-level smoke from high level, had what's called PM 2.5, or particulate matter less than 2.5 microns, and that made it as far as New York City. Disease is spreading north, Lyme disease, pine bark beetle, and all of these things cause political instability. So, those are very real concerns. And there's some pug marks in the snow that are telling me that the world opinion is changing when it comes to burning hydrocarbon. What's a pug mark? A pug mark for me is if you never knew that polar bears existed, and one day you're out walking in the wintertime and you saw these massive footprints in the snow, pug marks in the snow, you would say, maybe there is such a thing as polar bears, and maybe there's one close by, right? That's a pug mark. So I scan the horizon every day for pug marks in the snow, indications about which way things are going, and getting those vectors sorted out. So some pug marks, 18 countries and 16 major international cities today have declared they're phasing out ICE machines, internal combustion engine, ICE, ICE machines. I call them that for short. Kind of goes with the polar bears, you know. And they're putting in zero emission standards and subsidies for zero emission vehicles for people to buy them. Just this past week, it's been announced that the major car manufacturers of the world are going to be making 40, count them, 40 purely electric vehicles. And those will be ready by 2025 for us to buy, and most of them will be ready by 2022, and that is 3 years away. 40. I don't know what's going to happen to my Elon Musk Tesla guy, but he's going to have some competition, that's for sure. I mean, it's really not easy, right? We look out the window today, and we just see ice machines everywhere. And it's not easy to figure out that are we or are we not in an energy transition. And the hardest part about that is that we're born into the hydrocarbon era, all of us. And we don't remember any days before hydrocarbon, neither do our parents. So it's hard to fathom that just because it's like this is how it's always been, therefore this is how it's always going to be. And that's just not so. We've been, as humanity, through so many energy transitions, and I'll just tell you a few. So 5,500 years ago, we domesticated animals. Now animals are doing a bunch of our work. That's an energy transition. 3,000 years ago, was the first coal use by the Chinese. Now coal is doing some of our work. 2,200 years ago, the first solar experiment happened. Archimedes, his king was being attacked by ships in the harbor, wooden ships and sails. And he took a bronze shield that was like, you know, round and parabolically shaped and polished the inside and took the sun and directed it onto the sails of those ships, and they caught fire, right? Burnt all the ships out of the harbor. First solar experiment. 1,500 years ago, the Persians built windmills to grind grain and to pump water. And 300 years ago, we almost killed all of the sperm whales because we wanted the oil that's in their heads and their backs. They use it for flotation. It's spermaceti wax. And it burns so beautifully without any smoke. So let's take that. It was only 200 years ago, only, that electricity went from being a scientific curiosity to a way that we do work in the world. We figured out machines and how to harness it. That was only 200 years ago. And it was only almost 100 years ago, I think it's like 99 years ago, that the oil discoveries in the Texas Gulf Coast and the Persian Peninsula, which are humongous, caused oil to be both cheap and abundant. And what that did was it took over electric cars. Up until that point, for 30 years, from the 1870s to roughly 1920, do I have that right? 1890, sorry, to 1920. Electric cars were the thing. But as soon as a number of things happened, one was oil, cheap and abundant. 2 was Ford and assembly line production. And 3 was better roads, and people just wanted to travel them, and electric cars didn't have that range. So that was the end of the electric car for a while. And 83 years ago, the first major oil discovery in Alberta, Leduc number 1, Turner Valley. And this place, Devon, is named for the Devonian time of those rocks that oil comes from. It started this town, 1947. So oil has been important, but there are energy transitions before it and there will be energy transitions after it. And even though we don't see it when we look out of the window, right now, we are in the middle of one. The early stages, but in the middle of the next energy transition. So, let's talk some facts about Alberta and Alberta's oil. Well, Canada is the 4th largest oil-producing country in the world. United States 1, Saudi 2, Russia 3, and Canada's 4. And our province of Alberta produces every day 2.7 million barrels out of the oil sands. And every day we produce 1.5 million barrels out of conventional and fracking tight oil. We export 9 times the oil that we use every day. 9 times. 9 times our domestic consumption is what I'm trying to say. And 77% of those exports from Alberta are for transport fuel. That is diesel, gasoline, and jet fuel. Excuse me. Now this is key. We've been thinking that we're in the energy business. Oh, we are so not. We're in the transportation business. Clearly. So why do I think oil is going away? I mean, honestly, yesterday at 3 o'clock, I looked it up. West Texas Intermediate was at $57.62 a barrel. Not bad. Western Canada Select was at $48.88 a barrel. Not bad. But oil companies are saying the price is just going to continue to go up. Demand is going to continue to go up. And right now that's true. That's because we have other countries in the world are lifting their people out of poverty on the back of hydrocarbon so that they can enjoy at least some semblance of this life that we enjoy, the quality of life we enjoy. So for now that's true, but it's not going to last long, and there's something that's going to overtake it. So let's get to it. 4 reasons, when you put them together, is going to spell the end of the oil price, and that is affordable for us to produce at. So, number 1, oil trades at the margin. What does that mean? That means it's very, very sensitive to oversupply and under demand. If we plot that, so oversupply or under demand versus the price of oil per barrel, right? So if we have 1% world under demand or oversupply, I hope my dress doesn't go up. This is, you'll let me know, right? When you start to laugh, I'm just going to know, because I'm going to focus here right now. This is interesting. I'm so glad we have this on film. Okay, enough silliness. 1%, either oversupply or under demand, cuts the price of oil, whatever it was, in half. Half. 1%. If it's 2%, it goes to 1/3. That was 2014. If it's 3%, it goes to 1/4. You're seeing a pattern here. If it's 4%, it goes to 1/5. And that was 2008. Right? This is crazy. This is a pattern that we've observed. That's the first piece. What's number 2? This is a barrel of oil. And 70% of every barrel of oil is transport fuel. Worldwide, Alberta, it's 77%, but worldwide it's 70. And the top part here, petrochem, a little bit of heating oil, but some of this is avgas, aviation fuel, some of this is bunker, but the bulk of this is actually land transportation, the bulk of it. Okay, we're in the transportation business. Number 3. Electric cars. So we're going to compare ice machines to the lithium-ion battery, to a battery that is under development right now. So there are like more than a dozen new battery systems for mobility coming under development right now. And my favorite one is the vanadium lithium phosphate battery. And I'll show you why. So let's compare. Well, let's look at moving parts in the engine. This has about 800 moving parts, not including the transmission. This has 2. And this will also have 2. Tesla only has 17 moving parts in the entire drivetrain. So let's look at maintenance. This is expensive. This is cheap like dirt, because there's so few moving parts. My number 1 maintenance cost is tires. It's the same here. Now let's look at age out. Average age out of cars, ice machines in the world is 15 years. And that's about, 350,000 kilometers. When it gets up there, maybe 400,000 for an old Toyota. But that's, then they age out. They just start to fall apart. This thing, 800,000 kilometers, and that's the same. That's age out. Performance. And this is the same. When you go for your Tesla ride, I'm going to show you torque. I'm going to show you torque performance. Now, distance on 60 bucks, how far will 60 bucks of fuel get you? Well, I have another car, and it's a 2007 Santa Fe, and I use it for hauling my kayak around and dirt roads and being in the bush and things. And when I put 60 bucks of fuel in that car, I could go, 500 kilometers, say, roughly. If I put 60 bucks worth of electricity in my Tesla, I can go, and that's at 7 cents a kilowatt hour, which is what it is on the grid today in Alberta. I turn this way. I'm going to fix this. I'm sticking it over here. Try that. Ha-ha! Got it. I can go 5,000 K. That's 10 times the distance. 10 times. And I have solar panels, so I don't even pay 7 cents a kilowatt hour. My garage is my fuel station. So let's look at range. Now we get into some of the sticky bits, right? Range. Ice machine. What's the range for a tank of gas, would you say? What? For your car? Just give me a number.
700.
700. My lithium-ion battery will only take me 475. But the new Teslas are up to 550. And the newest one that's on the board is coming in at 970. This thing, though, 1,500. Because the charge density of this is somewhere between 4 to 11 times that. And I've just taken 4. And at 4, we're at 2.5 times farther, well, than that. About 2 times, say. 2 and a bit. And lastly, well, and then there's time to fuel. This is also contentious. This takes, 5 minutes, right? This takes me somewhere between 30 minutes to 1 hour on a supercharger. In my garage, it takes me 5.5 to 6 hours, but I just plug it in and it happens overnight. This thing, 90 seconds to 6 minutes, somewhere in there. That's what they're saying. I think that means that's solid state, but they're not saying, And then lastly, another contentious one, cost. Right now, this is more expensive. Now, I bought my Tesla used. I paid $60,000 for it, used. But you can go to Go Electric in Calgary and talk to Jim Stile down there, and you can buy a Fiat 500e, totally electric car, small, good for running around the city, for $15,000 today. Today. I saw it yesterday. So, used. They're all used. Go Electric sells used electric cars. That's its business model. Yeah. And this thing, when that hits, and also there's no cobalt in there, so that makes the batteries way cheaper. Nobody needs to go that far, so the batteries will be smaller, and the batteries are the #1 cost of an electric car, is the battery. And so this is going to mean that it's going to be, the cost of this will be 10% of that. That's coming, within 10%. And it's going to get more cost effective than that. So that's number 3. And really what you're seeing here is that an electric car on many, many measures is a better car than an ice machine. And also, my little favorite, no emissions directly. Now, of course, we're talking about the Alberta Grid. If I charge strictly on the Alberta Grid and not on solar panels, I take responsibility for the emissions of the Alberta Grid, right? And back, before the gas plant, the Shepard gas plant was built, the Alberta Grid was 0.88 kilograms per kilowatt hour. So that was 0.88 kilograms of CO2 released into the atmosphere per kilowatt hour. We're heavy in coal. More than half of our electricity is coal-fired here in this province. So once the Shepard plant got up, now we're down to 0.63. And even at 0.88, it was still less carbon intensive to drive an electric car than to drive an ice machine. Now we're down to 0.64. So we're at about half the carbon footprint in a ice machine, or in an electric car than an ice machine, just taking into consideration the driving. So, what's the last bit? Here it comes. Number 4. In 2016, there were 1.2 billion vehicles on the planet. And of that, 1 million were electric, and 1.2 million were hybrid. 2017, 1.2 billion. But now we have 3 million electric. 2018, 1.3 billion on the planet. We have 5 million electric vehicles on the planet running around. This means that the doubling time, and you got, when you're looking at any new innovation, doubling time is critical, is about 1.5 years. So we'll be doubling the number of electric vehicles on the planet about every 1.5 years. So it doesn't take long for this to double to 10, and then that's going to be 20, and it's going to be 40, and it's going to be 80, it's going to be 160 million, and then 320 million, and then 640 million, right? It doesn't take long, yeah? Vehicles, electric vehicles on the planet. So, you add to this that age out is about 15 years of an ice machine, right? That means 1/15 of the world fleet is replaced every year. 1/15. In 2016, the number was 86 million new vehicles bought that year. That's 15%. Or not 15%, 1/15 of 1.2 billion. So, at that rate, 1/15 of the world, let's just pretend that this hits. And now everybody whose car ages out buys an electric car. It's going to take 8 years for half the world fleet to become electric in 8 years. So, I mean, that's assuming we have enough, lithium and vanadium and all of these other things, and that we have production levels up, but that's what we're, ballpark, what we're looking at. So what happens if we lose half of our transport fuel draw? What happens to the oil price? Well, that's 35% of a barrel. Let's get conservative, we'll call it 25%, just because there's laggards in the room. Maybe I'm never going to give up my ice machine, right? 25%. What happens if we put 25% in here? What happens there to the price of oil? Now, I'm not saying it goes to 1/27th, but it does tank. And it doesn't take half the world fleet to tank it either. So, all kinds of people have all kinds of predictions, and I am no different. Conservatively, there's an outfit called Wood Mackenzie. Oil analysts. They say we're going to have peak oil in 2036. That's what they say. And on the other side, there's this guy, Dr. Tony Seba. He studies disruptive energy systems. And he says that the oil is going to be $25 a barrel in 2025. That's 7 years away. At $25 a barrel, that strands oil sands, offshore drilling, fracking, and leaves us with conventional. That's what that price does. So, I'm a little different. I look at the future in more of a probabilistic kind of a way. I think no matter how low the demand goes, I think we probably aren't going to get less than $26 a barrel. That's what I think. That's because of the petrochemical value of it, and also other uses, right? But this is what I think. So when is that going to happen? Well, I think there's a 54% chance that that'll happen by 2026. I think there's a 64% chance that'll happen by 2030. I think there's a 75% chance that'll happen by 2040, and an 88% chance that'll happen by 2050. And if you want to look at 2060, we're looking at 98% chance. So what an idiot, eh? Making a prediction like that. But that's what shakes out. 26 bucks a barrel. Right now, most of our oil sands has a 40 buck a barrel raising cost. So is our frac oil. Offshore is done like dinner, right? So, and actually even the petrochemical aspect of that barrel of oil is under attack because, well, attack's a strong word. Plastics. People are not happy with plastics these days. And we're going to have replacements for that. Things that are biodegradable, which plastics are not because of this awesome hydrocarbon that's in them, right? So, electric cars, there's a lot of factors here. This is a bit of a simplification, but electric cars are the #1 reason that for the tank of the oil price. And I hope you all buy one. So, let's look at the grid, the Alberta Grid. What would happen if all the cars, and there's 2.2 million cars in Alberta, what would happen if all those cars were actually, if they went electrical the same day, what would happen? Well, there's 3 parts of the grid, right? There's generation of electricity, then there's transmission, high voltage lines, you know, those big lines that, you know, the line stands look like robots to me, those things. And then there's distribution that takes the step down electricity to your house. So what would happen? Well, production of electricity would be just fine. We have enough capacity in this province to handle all vehicles in the province going electric. We have enough. It would mean that we burn 10 to 15% more fuel. Now what about transmission lines? We have enough. They'd be fine. We're overbuilt for transmission in this province. But distribution would go to hell in a handbasket. Why? Because a grid, you have to balance a grid. If it's not balanced, you're in trouble. That means that every time you take an electron out, you got to put an electron in. And there's only so much capacity for delivering electrons to people in the distribution grid. So we would have to institute new policy, new regulations, and a different way of pricing. That variable pricing that is based on the current demand. So we'd be charging our cars at night when everything else is low demand. And if we charged it at the peak, which is supper time, then maybe we'd pay 10 times the price for that electricity. And so we should, right? You might have a box in your house, the size of a bread box, if anybody remembers those things. And you might have a box in your house, and you say to the grid, I want to have 300 kilometers in my car by 7 o'clock tomorrow morning. And the grid decides when to charge your car, when it's best for the grid, and it's best for your pocketbook, right? And maybe if you say, okay, I'll have that in my house, maybe you'll also give the grid control over your fridge and freezer. So that when times are really peaking and they are having troubles balancing the grid, they can take this section of the province and shut down all the fridge freezers for half an hour, which doesn't hurt anything. And then they take that section of the province and they shut down all the fridge freezers there. and etc., right? I mean, those things only have about a 200 watt draw, but if you put them all together, you know, it can add up to something. So this is smart appliances. This is really smart algorithms. This is coming. So that's what happens about transmission. Now, there's another innovation that's coming that is going to kick the living snot out of the oil price again. And it's called transportation as a service. Transportation as a service. We already have that to some degree. Uber and Lyft are transportation as a service, right? And basically, we're talking about shared, autonomous electric vehicle fleets. That's shared, autonomous, and electric. Those three things together. Right now, we have Lyft and Uber. That's a shared vehicle fleet. We have electric vehicles. What about autonomous? Well, let's look at the pug marks in the snow. Waymo. That is Google's autonomous transportation project. They have logged, where is it? 10 million miles of driving in the real world. 10 million miles. 16 million kilometers, all right? And 10 billion miles in simulated driving. 10 billion. So it's learned a lot about being an autonomous vehicle. Tesla has the Tesla Autopilot. That is unbelievably cool. And everybody in this room can experience it if you want. You go to a Tesla dealership, I know there's one in Calgary in Chinook Mall, and you book yourself a 1-hour test drive. And they take you on a route, and at some point they say, if you have the guts, press this autopilot button. I did that. And then I took my hands off the wheel, and I took my feet off the pedals, and it took some guts, let me tell you. And I watched this car drive itself better than I could. In about 5 minutes, I was comfortable with it. Yeah, I scared the living snot out of me too at the time. First 5 minutes was really scary. Yeah. So Waymo, Tesla has theirs. There's actually a young Calgary fella, and his company is called Embark, and just a couple weeks ago, he does autonomous software, etc., for freight trucks. And one of his freight trucks went coast to coast across the United States, totally 100% autonomous, no issues, no scary moments, none. And that's out of Calgary, Embark. Those are pug marks in the snow. This is coming. This is here, you know. We just got to get regs and policies sorted around it. So that's one reason. There's another reason, and it has to do with economics. And basically, to own a car ownership costs you $10,000 to $12,000 a year. That's after you've paid for the darn thing. So, right, that includes things like maintenance, tires, insurance, parking, etc. Right? $10,000 to $12,000. If we're going this way, it costs a person $1,000 a year. That's a factor of 10. Whenever we see a factor of 10, that's a disruptive technology, and it is going to happen. My son, Gen Z, does not want to learn to drive a car. He doesn't want to own a car. He uses public transport. He loves it. So the other thing is that for car ownership, we only drive those cars 4% of the time. 4% is the average. That means they're parked on the most expensive real estate in the world for 96% of the time, right? If we have this model, we're going to have 6 out of 10 cars on the road are going to be gone. 6 out of 10. Think what that's going to do for congestion. And, 6 out of 10 gone if we do this. And also, things are going to get faster because they're autonomous, and the roads are going to get narrower. Because you've only got 40% of the cars on the road, you don't need all that road space anymore. So a bunch of that road space is going to be reclaimed for green space, and also for buildings in the middle of the city that didn't have any space before, shops, dog parks. It's going to be significant. And also, this solves the public transport problem, which is the first mile, last mile problem, right? First mile, last mile, I got to walk to the bus stop, maybe a mile. And when I get off the bus, maybe I got to walk a mile to where I'm going. But this, what you do is you get on your phone, you say, I'm here, it knows where you are. And I'm going here, and in 3 minutes, that car shows up, no driver, you get in, and you get whisked off to where you're going, and off you get, and you're charged for your ride, and it's a tenth the cost of owning a car. That's where we're going. So who benefits from this? Well, the roads are going to be way quieter. There's no exhaust. We're not going to be breathing particulate matter 2.5 from diesel and cars that aren't running very well, anymore. Those stinky cars that go past you on the highway, right? It's going to save everybody money. Seniors who have lost their licenses and their freedom are going to be able to get around. Gen Z folks, like my son, is going to be very happy. Differently abled folks are going to have more freedom to move around. People who are too young to drive will be able to get to where they need to get to. I don't know if that's a good thing. But the corollary to that is we're going to know exactly where they are. All right, that's the corollary. So this is going to happen in towns and cities first, rural later. So the bottom line here is that there's a lot of pressure coming on transport fuel, which is 70% of every barrel worldwide. What are we going to do? What's Alberta going to do? It makes the most sense for personal vehicles to go electric. But it also makes the most sense for freight trucks and trains and planes to go hydrogen. That makes the most sense. Physics, it's physics really. This has more energy density than that. These freight trucks will fuel faster than if they were electric, and they have longer range as well. So a hydrogen fuel cell freight truck can go 700 to 900 K on 100 kilograms of hydrogen, versus an electric freight truck, which can go 500 K on a full battery. And that full battery takes, an hour to charge or more. And this freight truck will tank up in 5 minutes. Less, actually. So what's hydrogen? Let's do some basics, shall we? Hydrogen is the smallest atom in the universe. It is 1 proton with one neutron with one electron around it, right? One proton, that's hydrogen. But it doesn't like to hang out like that. It likes to hang out with two hydrogens stuck together. Why? Because this thing here likes to have two electrons, not just one, and they need to be opposite spins. This is just a little physics. And so we have another proton in here and another neutron in here, and now we have this, instead of being H, this is now H2. Hydrogen is always H2. It's the most abundant element in the universe. There's about 75% of the whole universe is made out of this stuff. But here on Earth, it doesn't exist by itself anywhere. We have to make it. And we can make it a couple of ways. We can make it out of methane. We can make it out of water, right, which is H2O. So this has 4 hydrogens for every carbon. This has 2 hydrogens for every oxygen. And we can make it out of alcohol. This is coming. And Inder, where are you? This is Inder. And Inder is a really smart guy. And he is working on hydrogen from methanol. Ethanol? Both. Alcohol. From alcohol, right?
I'm working on alcohol.
I didn't know that about you. So, and why is there no hydrogen hanging around here? Well, because it likes to complex with just about anything, you know, especially oxygen to make water. It loves to do that. So, let's look at the energy densities of a few things. How much energy is in 1 kilogram of how much energy is in it? 1 kilogram of hydrogen. The number is 142. The units don't matter, but they're megajoules per kilogram. Just look at the 142 part. CH4, that's methane, 55. Propane, 50. There's like almost 3 times as much energy in that hydrogen than there is in per kilogram than there is in this methane, natural gas, right? So what if, so this is worth way more money than this. What if in Alberta we could take CH4 and turn it into hydrogen and then sell it? What if we could take our windmills and our solar panels and make clean electrons, clean electricity, and we took water and we made hydrogen and oxygen, and then we took the hydrogen and we sold it? What if we did that? What if we took this carbon and we could either sequester the CO2 in our amazingly porous and permeable rocks? We have awesome rocks in this province. It's one of our strategic advantages in the coming years is we have awesome rocks for sequestering carbon dioxide. Or we have ways now coming up, new technologies, where instead of making CO2, we make carbon black. What the heck is that? Black powder. It's a solid. Carbon does not go into the atmosphere. Instead, it goes into powder. Right now, your tires out there are 30% carbon black. 30% right now. And there's a new battery coming called the amorphous carbon battery that we could make right here in Alberta and sell it around the world from this carbon black that is a byproduct of making this hydrogen. How cool would that be? we could make carbon black into carbon fiber. And we can make Tesla car bodies out of carbon fiber instead of aluminum. Mine's made out of aluminum. What if it was really strong carbon fiber? So this is critical. That we start thinking this way. There's a lot of advantages to Alberta fiscally if we do this. If we get our heads wrapped around it, if we build the infrastructure to move hydrogen. Hydrogen is not, I mean, it has some problems, it has some challenges, right? One is storage. It is expensive to store it. Why? Because you put it in a metal container, and hydrogen, being the smallest molecule there is, will actually work its way through the metal and escape. No kidding. 2% a month of your hydrogen escapes from your tank. And you can't do anything about it. And not only that, on its way through, it embrittles the metal. It makes metal hydrides, which makes the tank weak. Oh, joy. This stuff is, flammable. It's really flammable in the presence of oxygen between 4% and 95%. So if you're at 3%, no problem. If you're at 96%, no problem. But everything in between is, potentially a problem. I mean, that's also, you don't put, throw gasoline on a fire for that reason. Things go boom. So it's expensive to store, but also, if you want, you can store it as a liquid. But that's a problem, because that happens at minus 253 degrees C. It turns into a liquid then. But then, let's say we're going to take liquid hydrogen and we want to ship it over to South Korea, because they've said, we're not taking, we're going to decarbonize our economy. Well, we lose 1.25% per day in something called boil off. Per day. So if that is a really long trip, you don't have much by the time you get there. So this is why I think we have a better chance of shipping hydrogen to South Korea than Norway does. It takes them twice as long to get there. They have less product by the time they arrive. Anyway. And I think that's called drinking it, my friend. It just, you get to a point where you don't actually even realize you're doing it. It's like, where did that go? I don't know. Did it go through the glass? I don't know. Yeah. So how do we use this hydrogen in a hydrogen freight truck? I'll draw you a picture. So there's two ways to take this hydrogen, and you can move trucks with it. One is to burn it, not smart, 25% efficient, just like your ice machine is. Or we can use fuel cells. What's a fuel cell? It's a chemical way of taking an electron off of H2 and making that electron into electricity. And electricity and water vapor. That's what comes out the tailpipe. Just water vapor. That's drinking water. That's distilled water. That's awesome water. And so a fuel cell is 80% efficient. And in order to turn this electricity into motion, you have to put it through an inverter to make it from DC into AC. And that's 80% efficient. So this whole process is 64% efficient compared to 25% efficient. So that's why you would do it that way. Way more efficient. Let's have a look. Here's a truck. Right? And here is the hydrogen tank. And here is there's the truck. And right here on this side, we'll put the fuel cell. And on this side over here, we're going to put the inverter. And right in the middle, in between these two things, well, right about here, it goes the drivetrain. And right about here is the battery pack. Right? So guess what? Our group, Energy Futures Lab, piggybacking and partnering with Caesar, have started a project. We are building the world's, here in Alberta, the world's first 2 hydrogen fuel cell Class 8 trucks. Here. These things are going to run between Calgary and Edmonton for 3 years until summer of 2022. And they're going to be able to carry 63.5 tons each. These are going to be tandem trucks, so, you know, B-train, right? 2 trailers. These are going to have a range of 700 to 900 kilometers, you know, depending on the stop and start and depending on the wind and all that stuff. And these things have high torque. Why? Because this induction electric motor drivetrain, this thing, I'll show you. If you plot torque versus speed, a regular ice machine goes like that. That means that at low speeds, it has low torque. If you have a Ferrari, anybody here with a Ferrari? It goes like, maybe like that. High torque, right? And if you have an electric car, it looks like that. That's why Elon Musk can race with the performance 100, it's a Tesla S100P, race the top 6 drag racing cars in the world. This is just a production car, right? And beat 5 of them because of this. This thing will beat a Ferrari. But you have to actually, well, maybe the Ferrari goes kind of like that. This is at 60 miles per hour. If you start the race at 60 miles per hour, a Ferrari will beat a Tesla. But from a dead stop, has not got a chance in the world. So, you want to maybe take a ride in this car. Although mine is an old, slow Tesla. It's built in 2013. Yeah, question?
Two questions.
Yeah.
Can hydrogen be contained in composite tanks?
Yes, it can, actually.
Without the problems you discussed?
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. Especially carbon composites. Yeah.
Right. And the second question is, how many kilowatt fuel cell in those trucks?
I don't know yet. I don't know yet. No.
So would that truck follow the same line as the Tesla on the graph?
Yes, it would. And that's why truckers love it. And that's why we are looking at our partners in this project. I'm just going to tell you who the partners are. Caesar is where the project originated. Energy Futures Lab helped to facilitate it. Alberta Motor Trucking Association has taken it over and is heading up the project. Bison Transport, Trimac. Ballard Fuel Cell is providing, out of Vancouver, is providing the fuel cells. Freightliner Daimler is providing the truck bodies. The electric drive axles are being provided by Dana. The hydrogen for fueling, Prax Air and Air Products are putting that in. We're going to fuel this halfway between Edmonton and Calgary. And the hydrogen pumping system is being provided by H-Tech. And the Emissions Reduction Alberta, the ERA, has put 7.3 million into it, and everybody else has put about 8 million in kind into this project. It's a $15 million project. And this is happening now. Why is this so crucial? Because if freight transport goes electric, we're done. We're done. We've got all of this natural gas. What are we going to do with that? You know, we're going to be using hydrogen is going to be heating your house, I hope. Yep, question.
What are the implications of cold weather in the wintertime?
That is a great, great question. I have a secret concern, but which we will announce on video, which is fog. You know, what comes out of the back of this thing is water vapor. In the winter, I mean, a lot of water vapor comes out of our car exhaust. Maybe it'll be okay. Maybe it won't, but this is 100 kilograms of hydrogen, and every 1 kilogram of hydrogen when you burn that, you get 9 kilograms of water, right? Maybe. I mean, we're running the test, right? We're put sensors all over, and we're going to figure this out. We might have to store the water. We don't know yet. Well, because of the weight. That's 900 kilograms. And yeah, that's 900 kilograms. This is this truck with the two things will take 63.5 tons. But that's still 900 kilograms that, you know, you didn't have to haul around before. Yeah?
Is there a danger that this would form ice on the roads?
Well, sometimes we get ice on the roads from our ice machines. That's something we're looking at. We are definitely looking at all these things. Those are really good questions. Thank you. I want to finish this and then take questions because I have officially 5 minutes. You know, this always takes longer than I think. So we have to look at the economics of this right now, because this is the final piece. And after this, anybody who wants to get up and go, please feel free. And also, if you want to stick around, I'll answer any questions you have. So let's look at this. Well, huh? And there's Tesla rides. Okay, so oil from Alberta, we sell for $4 to $8 per gigajoule. That's about 25 to 50, maybe $60 a barrel. That's what that is, per gigajoule. We have to compare hydrogen to oil based on the energy, right? Hydrogen, we think, is going to wholesale in the future $18 to $25 per gigajoule. Sequestration for 1 kilogram of hydrogen will cost us 43 cents per kilogram. That's all in. That is, so that compared to this. Now, we are not going to be shipping the same number of gigajoules in hydrogen as we do oil, because there's going to be less vehicles. 6 and 10 vehicles are going away, right? But we think that we will have 2 times the economic activity in Alberta if we go hydrogen than we had with oil. I say had because I'm in the future now, and oil's gone away. So we'll have some conventional, and it's not going to be like one stops and the other goes. It's going to be more like that, right? This energy transition will be accomplished on the backs of hydrocarbon. Hydrocarbon is not a bad thing, but the bottom line, what this means to Albertans, is a couple of things. It means jobs, and it means retraining. It means earnings from both natural gas drilling that we'll be doing and hydrogen generation. It means both wholesale and retail income. It means increase in gross domestic product. It means royalties and taxes. It means future. How do you spell future? Economic, and my favorite word, resilience. That's what this means. And so we have to do whatever we can to make sure that freight goes hydrogen. You know, here in Devon, I think oil and gas is one of the bigger employers in town. But there's also a lot of commuters here that go to Edmonton, that go to the airport, go other places for work. There's agriculture in the area. There's an industrial park manufacturing, you know, Nisku and places. There's research, CanMet. And all of those things, all of them are going to be affected by the new hydrogen economy. And I think in a good way. So we have to get our heads around it. Yeah? We have to get our hearts around it. We have to accept it, engage it, plan for it, and actually make it happen so that we can benefit from it. That's the bottom line. Sooner rather than later. The end. So we can take a few questions. We got 3 minutes left. Yeah?
Very quick question.
Yeah.
If you're producing so much water from the hydrogen, why don't you run it back to the H2O process to generate the energy that you do?
Yeah. I will repeat the question. So the question was, if that is producing so much water, can we run that through a process to make hydrogen again? And sure we can, but not on that truck. Not on the truck, right? That's a bigger deal, right? That's electrolysis. That means we take a lot of electricity, hopefully from nuclear, which I'm also a big fan of. New nuclear, I would live next door to a molten salt reactor. I would not live next door to a water reactor, and that's all we really have around the world these days. So that's next talk. We'll talk about new nuclear. Yeah, question? Yeah.
The water issue.
Yeah.
Water is going to be a big problem in all kinds of places in the world.
It is.
Being able to deliver water may be just as effective as whatever other product might deliver to many parts of the planet.
You know, there's so I'll repeat that for the video. The comment was that water is going to be a challenge in the future. I 100% agree. You know, water's the new oil. And, well, hydrogen's the new oil, but you know what I'm saying. And we could move water around in these trucks to where it's needed. And that's, I 100% agree. Yeah. Next question. Yeah.
How energy intensive is it to take the hydrogen out of natural gas or water? Like in terms of take a lot of energy, and what's the cost?
I don't have those numbers in my head right now, I'm sorry. The question was, what's the cost? How much energy does it take? There's new technologies coming all the time. Right now we use steam methane reformers. In fact, 80% of Canada's hydrogen is produced here in Alberta. And we do it from natural gas, but our steam methane reformers are one of the worst CO2 emitters that we have. But there's new technologies like the, out of Florida, there's a standing wave reformer, and that thing makes carbon black instead of CO2. So it takes more energy to do that, but I think it could be really worth it. Yeah. Yeah, Willem.
As you know, I have some doubts about the carbon storage.
I know.
I'm encouraged by your thoughts that maybe the carbon can be used as replacing plastics as carbon fiber.
Absolutely, yeah. But you got to watch out for carbon fiber too, right? Carbon fiber is graphene. Graphene looks like this. Carbon, 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 carbon. Right? This one molecule thick, 6 carbons, and it's like a honeycomb of these things. And you got to watch out for this stuff. So if we have carbon fiber things, we have to be careful. You know, we'll be putting car bodies together with resins. But that carbon fiber, if the resin starts to break down, we have to recycle that, because if these little flakes come off and you breathe them in, that's a nasty thing for a lung. Any cell takes in carbon very easily. It takes in, sugar, for God's sakes, to keep the mitochondria running in your cells. And these flakes, I have SEM photographs of them going into lung cells. So we have to be careful of carbon fiber. And also, while I have a moment, particulate matter 2.5, there's new research out on that. That's really small smoke, particles, right? Those things are so small that you breathe them in, they go cross from the lungs into the blood, and cross from the blood, go everywhere in your body, but they particularly mess with your heart and your brain. And they cause inflammation. So a new study out of China, Beijing's got terrible air. Kids raised in that air versus kids raised over here in clean air, by the time they're 6, they're 15% stupider. 15% IQ difference. Yeah, so that's what happens with PM 2.5. That's a hydrocarbon problem. That's a coal burning problem. That's a diesel, particulate matter problem, right? So we make this change, and we're going to be healthier. That's what I'm trying to say. We're going to be healthier. And smarter. I think it's too late for me. Yeah.
Is there any potential that you see for the electrolysis of seawater to produce hydrogen?
I absolutely do, but not in Alberta. I think we should use formation water, which is salt water. And why? Because if you're doing electrolysis and you put, you've got energy coming in here, and you got a positive, you got a negative, and hydrogen comes out one end and oxygen comes out the other, you're going to end up with, if you use formation water, you're going to have sludge at the bottom of that thing that is high in all kinds of awesome metals that we mine for. Lithium, vanadium, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it is now 5 minutes past time. Anybody who needs to get up and go, this is your moment.
Let me officially thank you first, Maggie.
Yeah.
And then people can leave. I think when we started this, the idea of future girl didn't make a whole lot of sense to me. But after seeing all this math, I'm positive, not negative, that this is future girl. Right?
I don't want another T-shirt. I really don't.
So on that note, to segue over to our very heartfelt thanks for an amazing presentation. It gives
Thank you.
everyone food for thought. Heather and Alan and Mark and myself, we go away from these things and we say every month, how the hell can this get any better? And it just keeps happening. So this, to me, is pretty special. It's a very exciting time for the future of Alberta, and it would be really nice if some of our decision makers were able to listen to what Maggie has to say and try and poke holes in it, because I'm pretty sure that she can give it back just as easy as they can throw it at her. So on behalf of all of us, Heather has a little gift of thanks for your presentation.
Maggie,
this was made in Devon, and it's a sharing plate. So what you do is, what's on this plate is our appreciation for your generous and very, very. But what you can do, it has a little description on it of how to use this. So you can put something on it, give it to somebody, and then, or you can keep it for a while, put something on it, give it to somebody, and then they use what's on it, they keep it for a while, and then they pass it on. And it's another way of creating a sense of community. I also want to
That's circular economy,
tell
isn't it?
everybody how generous Maggie is. She came here on her own time, and in Calgary, and we are ever so grateful. We met her at the Energy Futures Roadshow, and we were all a little smitten with her. So, and she's offering to come back to talk about nuclear. So I think we got to take you up
Sure,
on that.
we can do
So
that.
Thank you again.
You're so
for
welcome.
all the walk the talks and the community
Thank
of
you.
Devon.
Thank you. Thank you all.